Bob, there's another great star on your program I admire very much.
You mean Fanny Brice?
No, I'll come to her later. I'm talking about Frank Morgan. I've never met him.
Well, that's easy to fix. Frank's just come in from a quick trip to New York. He's talking to the reporters. Say, Frank.
I'll be right with you, Bob.
Just a minute, Mr. Morgan. I want to ask you...
That's all right. The farm situation can be summed up in a nutshell. The farms are for farming.
Gee, that's hot. Let me get that straight.
Well, I'll put it another way. Under modern marketing conditions, if the farmer is to survive, he must stop the crop, oil the soil, and rototote the potatoes.
Frank!
Well, that's all, son. Now get back to your paper.
Just one more question, Mr. Morgan.
No. Now that's all. No. Good day. Well, Bob, it's a pleasure to see you again. Those reporters have been in my hair ever since I stepped out of the plane.
How's your trip back, Mr. Morgan?
Oh, fine, except for these pests. Why is it, I wonder, that as soon as a man is hired by a newspaper, he instantly becomes obnoxious? I never found an exception, and I must say...
Frank.
What?
Before you put your foot into it any farther, this fellow you're talking to sells more newspapers than...
Sells newspapers?
The Chicago Tribune, Philadelphia Ledger, Denver Post.
Well, give me a Hollywood Citizen News. Say... Tell me, son, how do you lads stand between the cars at the intersections without getting your brains knocked out?
Wait a minute, Pat.
What?
This gentleman's not a newsboy. He's the foremost newspaper columnist in America.
Oh, well, I'm terribly sorry. Please accept my apologies, Mr. Fiddler.
Frank!
Hollering.
Let me straighten this out, Bob. Mr. Morgan, my name is Ed Sullivan. I write a column for the Chicago Tribune Syndicate.
Oh, sure, Mr. Syndicate. I've read your column many times.
Frank, what's the matter with you? I never saw you act this way before.
Well, I don't know. I've been a little confused since my plane trip. My head is still buzzing.
Were you bothered by the engines?
Well, we stopped at Albuquerque, and they tried to send me a blanket, but I... Oh, you mean the motors?
Well, Sullivan, are you glad you met Morgan?
I want to get out of here.
Now, don't go, young man. I hope I didn't say anything to offend you or newspaper men in general. Believe me, my boy, yours is a wonderful craft.
I can feel it coming. Mr. Morgan, don't tell me that you're an old newspaper man yourself.
Well, I've had some little experience as a journalist, but I'd never tell a famous columnist like yourself about it.
Now, wait a minute, Frank. You once handed me a line of guff about your journalistic career. Let's see if you can make it stick with Mr. Sullivan.
You're acting very forward, young, for such a backward fellow.
Well, I've been on papers all over the country, Frank. What paper were you on?
Tell me, Mr. Sullivan, did you ever work on the old New York World in the days of its prime?
Yes, sir.
It was a fine paper. Well, you should have worked on the old Louisville Courier in the days of...
Morris Henry Watterson. I was there.
You were the Watterson. Newspapers, Tribune, Times, American Herald. Herald! Mr. Sullivan, did you ever work on the old New York Herald under James Gordon Bennett?
No.
Ah, there was a newspaper. In those days, reporters were artists, and they lived like kings.
I suppose you covered fires in a full-dress suit.
Only if the alarm rang after 6 o'clock. I was the Lucius Beebe of my day, but I seldom stooped to conflagrations. I was known as Foul Ball Morgan, the dean of the sports writers.
Dizzy or Daffy?
Sullivan, is it true your paper pays $2 for quips like that?
If they're not too much like that. Let's hear some more of the sports stuff, Frank. I used to dabble in sports a bit.
Oh, you dabbled in that, too. Well, you used to get around a bit, before you were a columnist, didn't you?
Never mind that, Foul Ball. Just keep pitching.
Well, I got my first big opportunity on account of a story I wrote about a baseball game. Mr. Sullivan, as a craftsman in words, you can appreciate it when I tell you this whole adventure hinged on a single sentence. I was sent up to Sing Sing prison.
What was the sentence?
30 days. I didn't mean to say that.
Go on, Frank.
Well, I was sent up to Sing Sing to cover a prison ball game. And honestly, I wish you could have seen the story I wrote that day. It was a classic. I covered every detail of the convicts' play, but unfortunately, I left out just one little thing.
What did you leave out, Frank?
Well, there was the prison break in the 5th inning and 400 or 500...
From that colossal blunder, you got your first opportunity.
Well, indirectly. My great adventure was soon to come. Mr. Sullivan, I'll tell you a story of journalistic enterprise that'll chill the blood of any man that ever peeped through a keyhole. And I do mean you.
Big story, huh, Frank?
Well, I should have won the Pulitzer Prize.
Just the first 2 letters.
P.U.
Yes, well, I can't. There's no. It was Christmas Eve in the Herald office, and as usual at that time, all of the reporters and editors had gone home. I happened to be there alone, trying to finish my Christmas dog column, when suddenly the phone rang. I was instantly galvanized into action. I said, "Hello?
Hello?
Who's this?"
Bob Young.
Get off the wire. A voice at the other end informed me that the madcap daughter of the nation's most powerful senator had just eloped with a streetcar conductor by the name of Rob Nichols.
That's a $2 one, Morgan.
You were all alone, Frank. What did you do?
Well, I dashed out to the senator's mansion. It was on Mansion Street. Checked the story, kissed the maid, and rushed back to the office. I arrived with the biggest scoop in years, and what do you think?
What?
No printers.
No printers?
Yes, they'd all gone home. It was time for a quick decision, and I knew my editor would promote me for it. I dashed to the composing room, wrote my story in type, and set a headline over it in 88-point Gothic, upper and lower case.
What size cap?
6 and 7/8. What am I talking about? I ripped out a dull war story from the front page, replaced it with my scoop, and started the presses rolling. The sweat poured from my face as I ripped the finished copies from the rollers 1,000 at a time.
Single-handed?
Yes, sir. And not only that, but I folded them, bundled them, wired them, dumped them, and sold 1,000,000 copies myself before 2 a.m.
Say, it must have been a great story.
It was. It had romance and drama. Here was a wealthy girl, a senator's daughter, so much in love with a poor young fellow that she elopes with him, disguised in her father's clothes.
Probably gave you a raise for that.
What? No, they fired me because they didn't like the headline I wrote.
What was the headline, Frank?
Fleas in senator's pants. Well, so long, fellas.
All right, I'm going to steal a little of Ed Sullivan's stuff in presenting Meredith Willson's next number. It's pretty well agreed that Cole Porter is the most sophisticated popular songwriter in America. He's on the Metro lot now, writing the score for the forthcoming production, Broadway Melody, which will star Fred Astaire and Eleanor Powell. Everybody knows the Cole Porter of today, but I'm sure that some of you will be surprised when Meredith plays the first hit song he ever wrote. It was published in 1919, and it's called Old Fashioned Garden. Cole Porter, 1939.
thoughts disappear. I care for you, month to month. When you are here, close to me,